Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for joining to our today's webinar. And the topic of today's webinar is the power of decision making in business analysis. Let's start. So first of all, I want to thank you everybody for joining today. And I know that you may be coming from different countries. So thank you very much for joining despite the time of the day. And I want to tell you a little bit about this webinar. So this webinar is being hosted by Advanced Edge Professional Services, and we are based here in Toronto, Canada, and we have the status of endorsed education provider of the International Institute of Business Analysis, and we are really proud of that. And today we are starting our series of recurrent bi-weekly webinars. My name is Anastasia Antina. I have more than 11 years of working experience in IT sphere, and I am a certified business analysis professional and also the founder of Advanced Edge Professional Services. So let's start. And actually, before we proceed to the contents of today's webinar, I would like to announce our next webinar that will happen on Wednesday, August the 28th, same time as today. It will also be an online 1-hour Zoom session. And there we will be talking about such subject as strategy in business analysis. So in case you want to join, please register for the webinar. Okay, so today's webinar's learning objectives are the following. First of all, we will discuss what is a decision, right? Because we are talking about the power of decision making in the area of business analysis. Then we will talk about the types of decisions business analysts of those performing business analysis activities may be involved in. The two types of decision making environments, why and how to decentralize decisions, and also we will talk about the anatomy of a decision. Okay, let's start. So first of all, what is a decision? A decision is a choice that you need to make or that you actually make after thinking about several possible options. So this is the course of action that you select, right? And what is important about decisions is that decisions are those activities or facts, right, that drive our actions. If we make a decision, then we act, and those actions lead us to the desired results, right? So decisions basically influence the results that we get at the end, right? So remember any situation when you had several options, you compared them, analyzed all of them, and then selected a certain way, right, of approaching a certain situation. Then you performed some actions, and those actions gave you the results. So in business analysis, we have to make multiple different types of decisions, right? So first of all, let's start with the definition of business analysis to see then what types of decisions business analysts might be involved into or influence. So business analysis is the practice of enabling change by defining needs and recommending solutions that deliver value to stakeholders, right? And this definition has several keywords, and I have listed them on the slide here. So they are enable, change, needs, solutions, value, and stakeholders, right? So in reality, business analysis is about change management, in ideal world, about successful change management, right? When we perform or go through a certain change, we want to achieve new results. We want to come, to the new state, for example, state B, right? From A to B, and to be able to achieve that result that we want to have, we need to make a series of decisions, right? So business analysts work with stakeholders, the enterprises, in order to help them go through a successful change by defining needs and recommending solutions that deliver value to those stakeholders and the enterprise as a whole, right? And during this initiative or project or process, there are lots of decisions that have to be made. That is why it is essential for business analysts to make sure they understand what a decision is, how a decision should be made, what decisions may be made, and what type of decision-making environment exists in the certain enterprise. So one more time, decisions are important because they lead us to certain actions, and those actions lead us to the certain results. And the change management process, which business analysts specialize in, is always about delivering new results, helping an organization to go through the change process to successfully receive those new results. So finally, we are here and we are now ready to discuss the types of decisions business analysts may be involved into, or they influence those decisions or may be impacted by those decisions, right? This is not a comprehensive list. These are just several examples that we use here. So first of all, as business analysts, we tend to work with different groups of stakeholders in order to elicit requirements, right, and to elicit needs. And then we want to confirm those solicitation results to make sure there is no misunderstanding or misinterpretation, right? And when we confirm elicitation results, this is a decision that we are waiting for from our stakeholders so that they confirm, right, that our elicitation results are correct. We empower them to make that decision. The elicitation results are correct. Receiving approvals and sign-offs, right? As business analysts, we tend to work on elaborating specifications, on elaborating requirements, on proposing solutions, on devising change strategies and recommending one of them. And once we complete this business analysis work effort, we then present it to our key stakeholders, probably sponsors, business owners, or other key decision makers, and we want them to sign off on those materials that we have elaborated. This is another type of a decision. Then we also need to make decisions about how we are going to engage our stakeholders into the collaborative and efficient work process, right? How often we will collaborate with them, who we need the most, what is the level of impact and influence each stakeholder group has, and how we are going to work with them. So these are also types of decisions that business analysts make. Then, of course, it is requirements prioritization. Depending on the context, in some initiatives, it may be you who prioritize requirements. And again, this is a decision-making process, or you may be the one who provides all the data about the requirements so that some other stakeholders, probably project manager or product owner or product manager or business owner, prioritize those requirements. Then we need to be able to define the solution scope and again decide what will be in scope and what will be out of scope, and probably also receive a sign-off or an approval or a decision from our key stakeholders on that proposed solution scope. Then we need to think about the way of working with change requests, and this also involves multiple different types of decisions. Who has the power to propose change requests? Who has the power to approve or decline or postpone them? How we are going to document them? How will those decisions impact the scope and the priorities? Then there is also the type of the decisions that is made in the area of validating and accepting deliverables. Once, for example, a solution is ready or part of a solution is ready, we need our stakeholders to be able to validate it and accept deliverables. Or it may be the business analysis team who validates the deliverables against the specification and also traces the implemented solution back to the requirements, to business requirements, and make sure that the elaborated solution covers those original requirements. And also there are the decisions that need to be made when we align solution with the enterprise strategy. So these are just some examples of the types of the decisions business analysts may be involved into. Let's proceed. All these types of the decisions that business analysts have to deal with and work successfully with during the whole initiative, they basically define the success and the quality of the business analysis work. So we come to the point when we can really see that the success of a business analyst's work depends on the ability to be able to make informative decision, like those types of the decisions that you are empowered to make on your own. And if not, like if this is not the type of the decision that you can make, but others should make, then it is your ability to be able to empower those others to make informative decisions. The key word here is informative. What does it mean? It means that we do not want other stakeholders, for example, business owners, business sponsors of the initiative, or some other team members, to make decisions like based on 1, 2, 3. Let's select item option 2, right? We want them to make informative decisions. Informative decisions are based on the collected data that is presented the way it is. It can be easily understood. And this is where business analysts play a vital role. They need to be able to collect all the data that is relevant for this particular analysis and present it in the most suitable format to the stakeholders so that they can make informative decisions. So again, two super important skills: being able to make a decision and being able to empower others to make those informative decisions. And that is why, again, business analysts need to understand the type of the decision-making environment that exists in an organization, and also how the process of making a decision or decision-making anatomy, okay? So without being able, without the ability to recognize what decision-making environment you are in, you won't probably be able, or it might be really hard to navigate within the organization. It's like being in a forest without a map or a navigator, and you very likely will be lost, will get lost, right? But when you know the type of the decision-making environment within the organization, you know who makes certain types of decisions, who you need to work with to receive certain decisions, what types of decisions you are empowered to make, then the process will be more smooth and the needed results will be achieved faster and probably in a more efficient way, right? And this picture here just shows you that this is what it may be like when you are in an organization trying to make business analysis work and you have no clue about the decision-making environment in that organization. So now I have mentioned decision-making environment phrase multiple times here. So let's see what types of decision-making environments exist out there. So the two types are centralized and decentralized decision-making environments. And frankly speaking, probably none of the organizations is 100% centralized or 100% decentralized. All organizations will fit somewhere on the continuum between these 2 points, the centralized decision-making environment and decentralized decision-making environment. So what is a centralized decision-making environment? So on one picture, you can see the interpretation, so to say, of a decentralized decision-making environment. Here we see that there is only a few people, or there is a very small group of people who are empowered to make most of the decisions in an organization, right? And such situation creates an environment where we have multiple requests for decisions that queue to those people, to that small group of people, right? And when there is such a queue, for example, there are only 2 people who make decisions, like or most of the decisions in the organization. And we have multiple departments, 100 and plus employees, and all of them have some types of the requests about like some situations, and all those requests for decisions they queue. What's the consequence of that? Well, the major consequence is delay in the work process, right? We have to wait for our request to be processed by that small group of people. And while we are waiting, probably we are blocked with our work and cannot proceed further. Like imagine if you're a business analyst, you have elaborated a requirement documentation, for example, but you need the CEO to sign off on that requirement specification. And only when you receive the sign off, only then that specification can be passed further to the development team to actually implement the solution for the documented requirement. And on one end, we need that implementation to happen as soon as possible because we want to release that new feature. On the other hand, we have to wait for that approval of the CEO for a week, maybe, or for several days. And this is a bottleneck, right? We cannot proceed with the development until we receive the sign off. And this is how delays occur and the value starts flowing much and much slower. In decentralized decision-making environment, decisions are made by knowledge workers, by those people who are the closest to the context, right, of the problem or of the situation where the decision should be made. And decentralized decision-making environment, they empower much smoother and faster flow of value and value delivery process to the end users and customers. Well, based on my example here, you might think that decentralized decision-making environment is much better than centralized, and everybody should go for the decentralized decision-making environment. Well, this might not be true, right? There are certain situations when centralized decision-making environments are required. It can be a very highly regulated industry, for example, when we cannot decentralize decisions, right? Or in the situations of crisis or high risks, centralized decision-making environments might be better. So it's not about like what's better, what's worse, and it's more about being able to recognize that there is centralized and there is decentralized decision-making environment. All organizations fit somewhere on the continuum between the two, and by observing and analyzing the materials in an organization, the stakeholders who you collaborate with, you as a business analyst need to be able to recognize the existing decision-making environment. Okay? So, but most probably software development companies and other enterprises from other industries that do not come from highly regulated industries and are not currently living in the situation of very risky crisis, they tend to decentralize decisions, right? And the reasons for that is that decentralized decisions enable much faster decision-making process, which in its turn like makes the whole process of value delivery much faster, right? Then decisions made not by the probably C-level positions like CEO, CFO, or probably the top management, but the decisions made by knowledge workers who work with this context, right? Who are faced with the problem or the situation where a decision needs to be made, they can make much better decisions because they have the local knowledge, the knowledge of the local context that empowers them to make that decision. Also, this ability and feeling for knowledge workers that I, as a knowledge worker, I am empowered, I can make the decisions. It is my ability and probably even my responsibility within that organization to make certain types of decisions. This feels good. right? This gives the sense of ownership and also raises the ability to collaborate with my teammates or my colleagues, and it raises the responsibility and just restores the joy of work. Comparing to the situations where I know as a employee in an organization, well, I can do the analysis, I can get together some data, but it is them who makes all the decisions. I cannot influence anything, right? That is why decentralized decision-making environment system has lots of advantages, including increased employee morale and motivation, and also faster flow of value and better decisions. So, why do some companies still tend to centralize? Well, we have covered this a little bit more before. So it gives them more control. Those organizations who centralize decisions, they are fearful of failures and of mistakes that may raise costs, right? And decentralizing decisions, the process of decentralizing decisions requires continuous investment. And it's not just investment of money, it is also investment from especially top management of time and effort, right? Why am I saying this? Why am I saying that this decentralization of decisions requires investment in time, money, and effort? Because we cannot just decentralize decisions and go from centralized to decentralized decision-making environment in one day, right? Assume that you are working in a totally centralized decision-making environment, and one day management comes and says, okay, we have made the decisions that now we want to have a decentralized decision-making environment, so you all go ahead, make the decisions you feel are right, and let's start with this. Well, if we do this just within one day, then this will probably lead to lots of mistakes, to the complete chaos, and to the waste of effort and loss of money, right? Because to decentralize decisions, an enterprise needs to make certain preparations and to make the two pillars for decentralized decision-making environments. We need two pillars, and we need to continuously invest time, effort, and money into building those two pillars continuously. It is not a one-time action, it is a continuous activity to build those two pillars. And only when we invest in building those two pillars, only then we can keep decentralizing decisions. And the higher, the better, the stronger those two pillars are, the more decisions will be decentralized. So let's find out what those pillars are. So first one is organizational clarity, right? To build organizational clarity, we need to know the mission of the company, of the enterprise, and its values, the vision and the roadmap for the upcoming year, probably, or half a year, 6 months. If we are working in a scaled agile environment, we need to have regular program increment planning meetings or other types of meetings not in a scaled agile framework, right? And we have to have up-to-date backlogs so that we know what's going on, what's coming up, what is the next priority. We need to know leadership expectations about the quality of work and the quality of what's about what they expect from the employees, right? And in certain cases, we might need activities management, right? When each activity is being monitored, improved, and done better each time. So why? And remember, I told you that there are two pillars, and all these actions here, they are not a one-time action. You have to continuously invest and build this pillar of clarity, right? It's not enough to just once write your mission on a paper or in a knowledge base, on a page in a knowledge base, and never speak about it with your employees. It is not enough just to put it there on your website and this is it. No, you have to communicate it continuously. You have to remind about it. It should be on the information radiators if you are working in the office. It should come from top management. The same with values. They are not just written once somewhere and then forgotten and nobody follows them. Values actually influence our expectations, the activity management, and the decisions, right? Because values are not separate from everything else what's going on in the company. They actually drive the decisions and influence them. Because if we announce certain values, we have to act in accordance with those values. So, like plannings and backlog updates, these are recurrent activities. You cannot do these activities once. You have to do them over and over again at the same cadence, probably weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly, depending on your context, right? And you need to talk to people, to have regular one-on-one calls, to be able, you communicate your leadership expectations, and you hear feedback and process the feedback from your employees. Okay, so one pillar number one is organizational clarity, and it really requires the time, effort, and money. Now, let's get one step back. Why organizational clarity is one of the pillars for decentralizing decisions? Well, because imagine that you are a knowledge worker faced with a situation when you need to make either decision A or decision B. Well, that decision that you give the priority to, it shouldn't be your personal preference, right? It shouldn't be what you like more. It should be completely, but instead, it should be completely aligned with where the company goes, what the company wants to achieve, what the company expects from you, what the company's top priorities currently are. So that decision that then will drive actions and results should make the enterprise make one step forward to achieving those goals, strategy, and going towards the mission that it has, right? Not taking the company into opposite direction. So your decision as a little brick influences that company's mission, values, vision, and roadmap. That is why you need to know about organization where you work, what its mission, values, vision, roadmap, and everything else is, right? To align your decisions. So now let's proceed and talk about pillar two. Well, pillar two is technical competence, right? Or in other words, the level of proficiency that you have at your work. And this also requires continuous effort. It is a recurrent activity or continuous activity, and it's about developing the communities of practice so that employees in the company can communicate, share experience, share knowledge, talk about the tools they have recently used, those that they liked and they did not like, what worked, what did not work, right? And this enhances the technical competence of teams. Knowledge sharing, mentorship practices, when you promote those who have more knowledge and enable them to teach others to share the experience, probably organizing some skills training and the ability, creating the environment where those new skills can be applied and trained. And all these activities should be recurrent, iterative, incremental. We need to build that second pillar, right? Because to be able to make a better decision, I, as a professional, should first know everything about, I should be aware about the organization, right? Like what it wants to achieve so that my decision is aligned. And then I have to be competent and make more professional decision, right? So this is how we build those two pillars and start to invest in them. And the more we invest, the higher those pillars are and the more decisions getting decentralized. This is how it works. This is not an easy one-day process, but that's what delivers results. a continuous effort. So now let's get to the anatomy of a decision, right? So when we need to make a decision, there are 5 factors that influence the type of action that we will make, right? We need, first of all, the information to be able to think about the decision, right? Like, do I have sufficient information to be able to make a decision? We need to understand our authority. Do I have the authority to make this type of a decision, right? Or is it my boss who should be making such types of decisions? Competence. Am I competent enough, right? Do I have the right level of professionalism in order to make this decision? Organizational clarity, we have already discussed this, and also impact. Do I understand the impact of the decision that I'm about to make, right? These are 5 factors. And one note here, it is crucially important for business analysts to know and think about these 5 factors, not only when it is you who is making the decision, right? But when you need a decision to be made by somebody else, because you need to be able to define the right person who has the authority to make the decision. You need, for example, a sign off on specification, right? You need to be able to go to the right person and not to ask another person to make that decision or approval for you, right? You need to be able to identify whether you have presented enough information for that person to be able to make the informative decision that we were talking about at the beginning of this webinar. So these 5 factors should be kept in mind when you are making a decision on your own, or when you are collecting information and need somebody else to be able to make that decision so that you can proceed with your work. So now the possible options when we are about to make a decision. Well, option number 1 is escalate the decision, right? And escalating a decision takes place when we recognize that we do not have the right level of authority to make the decision that we need to make, right? Also, decision escalation might happen very, very often in centralized decision-making environments, right? If it is a centralized decision-making environment, we understand that there is only a small group of people who can make the decisions, and that is why most of decisions are centralized. And this is an observation that can help you understand the type of the decision-making environment in an organization. If you see that all the decision requests are sent to one or a few people, this signals about the decision centralization. In decentralized decision-making environments, it is also okay to sometimes escalate the decision, and it is not a failure path. You have to recognize and accept the fact that it is okay for some decisions to be escalated when it is really the situation that you do not have the authority to make the decision. Then we have such an option as defer to last responsible moment. This is about those situations when we recognize and understand and accept the fact that it is more efficient and probably cheaper to wait longer in order to receive more information and then to make a better decision than to make the decision right now with less information and with a higher risk of mistake, right? So deferring decisions to the last responsible moment in order to collect more information and to be able to understand the situation better and to make the better decision is also okay. Sometimes this may take place. The 2 options that we are most interested in decentralized decision-making environments are taking the decisions and delegating the decisions. Taking the decisions means that you have enough information, you understand that you have the authority to make the decision, you understand the organizational strategy, mission, vision, priorities, and you can align your decision to the organizational goals. You understand the impact of that decision that you are going to make, and you are ready to make that decision. And when you take the decision, you also understand that you have the responsibility for the consequences that this decision will cause. And the last option here is delegating the decision. Is you have some subordinates, you're a team manager, department uh, director, or a C-level executive. You should tend to delegate those decisions to enable knowledge workers to make the decisions within the local context. But again, delegating decisions doesn't mean delegating responsibility for the consequences. Yes, you delegate the decisions down to the teams, but it is still your responsibility. You still own the responsibility for the consequences. Okay, so 5 options: escalating, taking, delegating, or deferring. And as a manager, if you have an option to delegate or take the decision, there are several considerations that you can think about. It's like, is it decision frequent and infrequent? Is it time critical or long lasting? Will it require local knowledge? Then certainly it should be delegated. Or will it influence the economics significantly, like the probably level of revenue or the losses that the company might have? So now when we have covered what a decision is, right? The types of decision-making environments, their advantages and disadvantages, the anatomy of a decision, the 5 factors that you should keep in mind when making a decision, the 4 possible actions: escalating, taking, delegating, or deferring. How can you, as a business analyst, use and apply all this information in your day-to-day work? Well, first of all, make sure that when you work in an organization or with a client organization, right, you understand the existing decision-making environment, so that first of all, you can understand what types of decisions you can make on your own or your team can make without some other stakeholders, right? And also to understand which types of decisions should be made by some other stakeholders and who should make those decisions, so that you can go to the right people and receive those decisions as fast as possible, right? Then when you know about the 5 factors, like the information, the impact, clarity, and all of that, you now, as a business analyst, understand what you need to provide and what you should consider when presenting the information to the stakeholders, so that you can receive the decisions you need as fast as possible, the sign-offs, the approvals, the confirmations, the prioritizations, and so on and so forth, so that the value can keep flowing, the work process can keep going, there are no bottlenecks, and the work continues, right? And now when you have the information about the 4 possible actions, again, it is easier to recognize which action is more applicable in a particular situation, and who and how you can probably delegate, escalate, or escalate the decision. And also, knowing about those 5 factors, let me open that slide. Knowing about these 5 factors allows you to correctly work in those situations when, for example, you need a decision, right? Let's go back to the same example with the sign-off on a requirement or specification. You have collected the information you think the stakeholder needs to be able to sign off that specification, but you're not receiving your decision. You're waiting for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, a week, 2 weeks, and you're not receiving the decision. Well, then go back to these 5 factors and make sure that what you are doing is Correct. Like, have you provided enough information for that person to be able to make informative decision? Or maybe some pieces of information are lacking, and that is why that recipient of that information, the stakeholder, doesn't really understand what has been presented and what do you want from that person, right? Maybe you need to present information in a different format. Instead of a textual format description, draw a prototype, a mock-up, and then reiterate, right? So factor one, then factor two, authority. Ask yourself whether you are contacting the right person to make that decision, or probably you have identified the stakeholder incorrectly. Then go and ask who you should work with in order to receive that decision. Does that person have enough level of competence to make that decision, or you should work with a different person? And again, clarity. Have you presented the information in a way so that it is clear how it pushes the company towards achieving its organizational goals, right? And have you specified like the impact of the decision that the stakeholder is about to make? Again, depending on the context, depending on the particular situation, these five factors can be viewed and assessed differently. But my point is that if you want someone to make a decision and you are not receiving that decision, go back to these five factors and try to understand the root cause of why you are not getting the decision you need and reiterate. And sometimes when you work with organizations and help them to go through through the change management process, remember about this option of building the two pillars of organizational clarity and technical competence as an option that you can propose as a change strategy to some enterprises if they are dealing with the bottlenecks or with the slow flow of value, and if they want to improve the efficiency of those processes. Okay. So this is just an example here that typically when customers or enterprises come and say, well, we need to improve our internal processes because they are very slow and the report generation process, for example, is manual and it currently takes like almost a week to generate one report, when in reality it should take like 2 days maximum. We want to improve this process. Please help us create a solution or a system to help us generate those reports in 2 days instead of a week. Well, always keep in mind that sometimes the active time over an activity is much less than the wait time. And this diagram here shows that the wait time can be much bigger than the active time. And probably business analysts sometimes should remember about this option, not to try to improve the active time of the report generation process or of any other process when it is already okay, but instead try to present solutions that will allow to decrease the wait time. And this is where you have uh, much more opportunities to improve the efficiency of a certain process. Work on improving the wait time instead of making the active time less and creating super expensive solutions that can, for example, automate report generation process, right? So, we are almost done with our today's webinar, and I want to sum it up. So today we were talking about what a decision is, the types of decisions business analysts are involved into, the types of decisions they influence, the types of decisions they need to receive from their stakeholders sometimes. We have also covered the two types of decision-making environments, the decentralized and centralized, and discussed that all organizations fit somewhere on the continuum between these two. options. We have also discussed the advantages and disadvantages of both and covered like what it takes to decentralize decisions, the two pillars that organizations need to continuously build and invest their time, effort, and money because it pays off, right? In faster decision-making process, in improved value flow delivery, and in higher employee motivation. And we have also covered the anatomy over decisions. I'm sorry, the 5 factors that we need to make a decision, and also the 4 options we have when making a decision. So I will be very happy to see you at our next webinar that is scheduled for August the 28th, same time as today. It will be also online 1 hour Zoom session, and the subject of that webinar will be strategy in business analysis. And if you have any questions, I will be happy to answer those. Please feel free to post them in the comments, in the chat, I'm sorry. If we don't have anything, let's stay in touch. You can visit our website for more information at advancedage.org. You can follow us on LinkedIn and send us an email if you have any questions, or send me a direct message on LinkedIn. Okay, thank you everybody for coming, for joining today. We'll be happy to see you at our next webinars in the series of our bi-weekly free webinars every other Wednesday, 11 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.